Much for such a warm welcome. It's brilliant to be here, and I'm just amazed at how many we can get into this room. I'm grateful for the few minutes I've got to share with you my experience over the past few years in fundraising, and particularly where things stand for us at the moment post-COVID. Can I just encourage you, we've got some free copies of the book, so even if you don't need to take notes, because whatever I say is going to be in the book, but there's some copies of our newsletter, which gives you some up-to-date news on the different clients and challenges we're facing at the moment across the sector. Today, really, what I want ideally is for you to leave with a really clear fix on something you can do when you go back to your particular day job, so that this is a valuable experience for you. It's a complex field. We've seen a lot of change since the COVID period. Let me get a clicker. And I'm getting there with the technology. Because ultimately, this is about people, what we do. It's about you and how you're going to affect and change the people that really matter within your organization and that your organization serves. Money is just a lifeblood, a way of making that happen. In itself, like so many things in life, dying rich is a bit of a mistake, in my view. You know, this, one Jewish friend of mine said, there's no pockets in a shroud. So the point here is, it's what you do with the gifts that you were given: volunteer time, financial resource, expertise. And that's our challenge in the third sector, and a really important one. But you play a key role in that. And so I'm very excited to have a chance to speak with you today about this. So what I'm going to cover, just briefly, these three areas. First, I'm bringing you up to date on the giving trends, particularly post-COVID, because the world has changed, and I'm sure you are many aware of that. I want to talk about how to build philanthropic income diversity. Why? Because that's about how you can manage risk. And if you've got a range of income streams, clearly you're less risky unless you're relying, say, on government grants, and I really hope you're not in that place, etc. How do you diversify your income streams? And then creating a fundraising strategy that actually improves your sustainability longer term. Unfortunately, so many of our planning cycles are at best about 2, maybe 3 years out forecasting. And really the charities, when we reflect today, that are having the biggest impact are the ones that have got a really strong legacy program. Their life and breadth of their work has been over many decades, if not in some cases hundreds of years. So that's the key areas I'm proposing to cover today. Okay, so where are we? In the world, the UK is actually ranked 22nd of all countries in the world. It's been going down steadily as a philanthropic nation for the numbers. That is not just the amount of money given, but the amount that people volunteer, and the focus that we give to the third sector. It's not a great place, and something I'm not particularly proud of, particularly as you can tell, I'm an Australian, I hope, by birth, and Australia is doing better than the UK, and my mates in Australia let me know that from time to time. But fundamentally, since COVID, 4 million less people are giving to charity, which is a really big issue for us, and how we turn that around is something to focus on when we discuss risk in a moment. But the good news here is that, according to the Charities Aid Foundation, those who give are actually giving more. So it's becoming much more of a focus game to work out how to build your fundraising income. Sadly, and I think a worrying trend for the future, this is just one of the worrying trends, is that only 1/3 of our young people, those 18 to 24, actually give, volunteer, or gave any money to any third sector organisation. That's a very worrying concern, and particularly if you think about the health of our societies, engagement in community, what it means to be, if you like, a citizen here in the United Kingdom today. And again, that's a real challenge for us. How do we get them more engaged and more involved in some level? Interestingly, anyone here from a health charity? The good news is, yes, you're top of the hit parade. Health charities are the most popular charities for general public giving. Anyone here from an education charity? Well, the good news for you is that for the higher net worths, those who will give £1 million, 60% of their giving goes to education charities. It's a really big focus for their giving, so focus on your major donors there. Crucially, as I just mentioned, 1 in 10 actually volunteer So if you think about in this room, it's probably 100% of you volunteer in one way or another. But actually in the broader community, only 1 in 10 people actually give time to a charity or get involved in their community. And this is the worrying bit, is down 20% in the last 2 years, according to the Charities Aid Foundation. When we look at the giving trends as well, now 1.1% of all, apparently, I don't know, I love spreadsheet people, they can do all these wonderful things with data these days, but 1.1% of all our disposable income in the UK is actually given away to charities. And that's quite meaningful when we look at the overall. There's, in England, this is, not the whole of the UK, there's a staggering amount given, £13.2 billion, according to the Charities Aid Foundation, actually given to charities. So when people say this is a niche or side area, then you just need to remind them about the scale of the financial support that's received. And as I said earlier, the mean monthly donation is actually going up to £75 per month for those who actually make a gift. Crucially for us here, I think, when we scan across the West Midlands, we have amongst the lowest percent of donors getting involved and active. And some of the challenging areas, you know, Birmingham, Ladywood, Tipton and Wensbury, Wolverhampton and Smethwick, for example, all areas that we know all too well, have got really low participation rates as far as communities they're giving. So if the challenge could not be clearer locally. But if you look to places like Sutton Coldfield, unsurprisingly, or Birmingham Hall Green, they're at the other end of the spectrum. So how do we make that stronger here across the West Midlands? You probably can't see that from here, but it's in the book. So please do have a look there. What most people don't appreciate is fundraising is just organised common sense. I've spent 40 years giving professional advice in this area, and frankly, you don't need jargon. It is a very simple relationship process. But it is important to use the right tools for the right types of fundraising, and people often get them mixed up. When I first started, the whole idea of an appeal was, you know, you would ask as many people to give as whatever they could afford to achieve your target. But as we've become more aware of the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule, we realise that if we're going to raise really large sums of money, we need to have very clear focus on where those major gifts and grants are going to come from. 80% of your target is going to come from 20% of your potential donor pool. Probably the top 10 to 25 gifts are going to deliver half your target. So rather than trying to convince everybody on every bus stop in the West Midlands to give, who are the key funders that you're going to need to get your project over the line? And the 3 types of fundraising are relevant to where I'm going here, because it is about building a relationship of giving, getting people into the habit of being philanthropic. And it starts usually with annual fundraising, that pile of bubbles on the left there. And you're all familiar with this, the sort of social events, the various regular giving programs, raffles, fates and fairs, as I like to call it. And it's about participation in giving and starting that first gift experience and getting people, and particularly young people, to see what it means to give. It's an interesting transaction to explain why give, and I'll come to motivations in just a moment. But if people can understand the value and what it means to them and what it makes them feel like when they actually affect positive change through their action, that motivates them for their life. So when you're assessing your fundraising programs, don't just look at the money, look at the number of people that you're getting involved, and particularly those that are coming through as first-time givers. Because in time, what can happen is when you have a capital campaign moment, that's the second pile of bubbles there, when you need to raise a lot of money for a very specific project over a relatively short space of time, it usually means going to a relatively small number of people. Then you have got a base to work from who are already in the habit of giving, that can get excited about this new project. And that's why it's important that you start with your annual fundraising. And then beyond the capital fundraising, now you've raised your millions, it's then talking about really the big opportunities at the moment is around, as I said, no pockets in a shroud, the legacy or gift in will programs. We are seeing the biggest single transfer of generational wealth from my generation, so to speak, the baby boomers, essentially because of property and pension assets, And if a charity is not talking about legacy giving, it's missing a big opportunity so far as major gifts are concerned. I mean, and simply put, let's bear in mind, and it's touching on slightly uncomfortable message here maybe. Firstly, we don't live forever, and you can't take your money with you. So we all agree that, I hope. And I think the other certainty is that taxes will always be there. But the other part to this is that most people don't realise that on average, people tend to update their will 3 years before they die. Now, why is that relevant in your case? It means that if you need to keep communicating with those people that have been your long-term supporters, because otherwise they could change their wish, their bequest in their will to another charity. And unsurprisingly, guess what? We're not really good at that. And therefore, the Cat's Home, the hospice, etc., always benefit most from the legacy giving that's going on at the moment. The other thing is that the good news here is that if you make a will, and this is something you really should be talking to Higgs about if you're not getting there, is that you tend to live longer than people who don't make a will. So there's a bit of good news to take home. And the other part is if you make a bequest in your will, you live longer than people who just make a will. So the idea is, make a will, leave something to charity, and then update it every 2 years, and you could possibly live forever. But jokes aside, legacy giving is really a very powerful area for you to consider when looking to the medium and long term in your charity. We talk about a gifted. Why we're called gifted is we see a very big difference between what is commonly known as a donation and what you know and understand as a gift. Now, a donation is defined here as something that is given to a charity, especially a sum of money, hooray. A gift, however, is a thing that's given willingly to someone without payment. And if you just reflect personally, it's often imbued with a lot of emotion and thought and consideration. When you select a gift, as I'm about to do for my parents-in-law for their 60th wedding anniversary, hooray, there's a lot of thought going into that process. And we're thinking about not only what the gift's going to be, but how we're going to wrap it, where we're going to give it to them, what we're going to be saying when we do it. Do you see what I mean? It's a thoughtful action. Whereas making a donation feels somewhat obligation. It's the change in the pocket. It's because I feel I must. You're giving blood, for example, or there's a duty part to this. And psychologically, it's really important that we focus on those first-time givers and encourage them to see that we want them to think about what they're doing. We're not a sales organization. We're not there just getting Pavlov's dog automatic response out of them. Yes, we'll take another £5 off you this time, another £10 off you next time. We want them to see this as a lifelong experience that is incredibly valuable and important for them defining who they are and what they're getting out of life and what they're going to be giving back through their life. Okay, so when you're examining your fundraising programs, think really carefully and your communication about how you're engaging, and particularly that key differential between a donation and a gift. Understandably, there are many, many motivations for giving. I'm just keeping an eye on my time here. Many motivations for giving. There is obviously, as you all know, the genuine altruistic response and really wanting to make a difference or to give back to society. But also recognise when you're planning your fundraising, there are other motivations. Some of it's about reciprocity. I'm going to make a gift to my friend because my friend, when I asked her, gave to the charity I wanted to have support. A lot of reciprocity happens that way. And even in the grant funding domain, you will see, certain grant funders come in and then others will follow. So it's really important to understand the interaction, the chemistry that's going on in those relationships. But people give because of religious reasons, and I'm having a lot of fun at the moment working with a Hindu mandir, a temple, and in Leamington Spa that's raising money. I'm having to learn a whole new cultural domain, but guess what? They are motivated in exactly the same way as the people that I worked with at Worcester Cathedral back many, many years ago. It's about their faith and how they wish to express that philanthropically. So you need to understand the motives and drivers, if you like, with your prospect pool. But sometimes it can be for recognition purposes. We've seen, particularly in the United States, some of their recognition is breathtaking when you go to the universities. The naming of buildings, and it might be that wanting to recognize someone that's been important in their lives, a teacher, let's say, that taught them at school. They've done really well. That's why they want to name that particular classroom after their teacher, if you see my point. Likewise, in memoriam, after their parents or their family members. But the most important reason that motivates people for giving is because someone they know and respect takes the time and trouble to ask them personally. The number one reason, in reverse, that people don't give is they're not asked. And if you really want to raise people's sights, make the ask as personal as possible. The strongest ask you can make is not, please give me some money, it's join me. Together we can ... change the world in this particular way. Your leadership as trustees and as fundraising professionals is the magic ingredient that will transform your fundraising output and more particularly build some really interesting and helpful long-term relationships. Again, possibly you can't see that well, but this is the donor pyramid. I'm sure many of you have heard or seen of this before. But you can see at the base, crucially, that is the area that most charities are not working on at the moment, and that's around getting the first gifts. Okay, and it can be the simplest starting point, £1, it doesn't matter. Just get people into the habit of supporting you so that you can say thank you. Another great way to ask, by the way, is saying thank you. And then you can ask for their advice, get their involvement, get them volunteering. But if you don't ask for those first gifts, they're not just going to come through the door. You then have an opportunity to renew those gifts, as you see at the second tier, to increase their level of support over time, again by demonstrating that the money is doing something meaningful that they really want to see achieved. And then they start to organise and do some planned giving. This is where they schedule giving out over a period of time so that you can rely on the regular pledges. The gold standard gift is the direct debit or bank standing order gift that comes in every single month that you can rely on to run the charity. Well, that starts by first asking for once-off gifts and then building that relationship. And ultimately, the old adage is, and I've had this argument before, we can't possibly ask these people to give again, they already are so generous. Well, guess what? The most likely people to give to you are the people who are already giving to you. So take the time to work on and develop those relationships and thank them and understand why they're giving. They're your future major donors. If not through cash giving now, then as I said, by leaving something to you in their will. And remember, 100 to 200 declared legacies, you know who they are, is gold dust, because you can now make sure that they get your annual report, they get a special message from the chief exec, they might get invited to the staff Christmas party, and again, generally do it at lunchtime because usually they're a bit older and don't like coming out at night. And they appreciate not over attentiveness, but they do appreciate the odd update as to how their money's helping the charity. And then, surprise, surprise, the solicitors will be in touch in due course to say they've remembered you in their will, which is a wonderful thing. So, I won't bore you by going through all the details here, but this is saying thank you is at the core of getting out of the malaise that we are in. Okay, we can't keep going with a 20% reduction in volunteers with our giving records dropping year on year post-COVID. And that's because we've become, in my view, far too transactional. We're forgetting what the motivations are for giving and what will ultimately encourage people to make that, gift in will, that lifetime gift. And to get out of that is we have to say thank you better and more genuinely and appropriately. If you're going to ask your chief executive to do anything tomorrow, get them to spend half a day on the phone speaking to your donors and telling them what you're doing and why their gifts are so important, and thank them. And you know what? Money will come in. No question at all. And yet it's the hardest thing sometimes to get a chief exec to do because they're into operating the charity and getting staff vacancies filled and building out this program and dealing with that particular problem. But the program of saying thank you has to be somewhat different depending on who you're speaking with whether it's a grant funder, whether it's a major donor, or even just online in your online community and social media. Let's remember where the young people today, says me, the ancient old man here, where are they congregating, okay? They're not congregating on street corners, or not as much as they used to in my day. They're online. They're in those spaces. So how are you reaching them? What communications are you putting into that space? Who is your influencers in that particular area to reach those audiences? So crucially, this is really where it makes it or not. Leadership is the magic dust. What you decide to do is going to make a massive difference to your charity's performance. The first place to start is to challenge yourself and ask yourself, are you giving all that you can to this charity? If you can't convince yourself to do that, you're not going to be able to convince anybody else. Now, I know that can be tough medicine. I find, visiting the mirror in the morning for a shave an interesting moment in every day. But it is a chance to challenge yourself and use that, because it's a wonderful way that you can then share that with colleagues. If you're fortunate enough, privileged enough to be a trustee, then talk to your trustees. Start talking about money. It's one of the last subjects, that I was when I was a young man, I was taught there were certain things you were not meant to discuss around Sunday lunch table. One was politics, sex, religion, and money. Well, I'm afraid after 60 years, it seems everything's fair game except money is still there as the last taboo. And as trustees, you need to be talking about that. And what are you doing as a collective group to actually give to the charity proportionate to your means and other commitments? So it's not about being the biggest donor, but you need to be a donor to demonstrate and lead the organisation and say to others, join me. Make it personal, okay? Don't write letters or emails or whatever these days. Take the time to speak to people at a one-on-one basis. Even if you cover less ground, the ground you cover you will do far, far more effectively. And think about the building relationship, that pyramid I was just talking about. Raise sights. I've never, and I've done this a long time now, I've never offended anybody for asking for more money than they thought they could give. Never, ever, ever. Do you know why? Because I'm complimenting them. They're more successful. They have more money than even they think they have. And actually, sometimes it's worth reminding them they probably do, because you can use gift aid, as you know all too well. You can pledge over time. There are real benefits now in planning your estate effectively, where you can get real tax benefits. Instead of giving cash, why not use those share options and give the options directly to the charity? And a lot, by the way, of my kids are getting remunerated in share options these days. It's another world. But what does that mean? That means they don't pay capital gains tax, and you get the gift aid benefit as well. So be smart and really try and show people how they can give a lot more than they thought they could. But you must, in everything you do, underscore the integrity of your organisation and be honest, particularly when things go wrong, and they do. Be absolutely upfront about it. Don't get into the PR sucker game of we'll string it out or pretend it doesn't happen or speak what someone described to me as mindfulness language, word salad language that you really don't understand what on earth they just said. Be straight. We got it wrong. We're going to fix it, and this is how we're going to fix it and move on. And we need your support to help fix this. You see what I mean? Share the pain, I think was the adage. And you really need to fast track your success. When you have success, okay, another great moment is when the chief exec lifts the phone to say on a Friday, I'm just calling you to let you know we've had a brilliant week in our fundraising. We can now do this program. Thanks for your help, but we've also had another 150 gifts come in. Talk success, talk progress, talk impact, motivate people by sharing good news rather than just sitting back smugly and knowing that when the financial accounts come to the trustees, they're going to look a lot better. It's too late by then. Anyway, I've given you a really top-level summary there. I hope that's helpful. Please take that book. There's a lot more detail in there. And as I said, and hopefully some useful references for you to draw from, Our website also, we put a lot of resources up there. Okay, we're not just in this for the money. We wouldn't have been here this long if we were. There's also some newsletters to just give you some ideas about other charities we've been working with. But thanks. This is going to be a great day today. It's been a real privilege to kick off. Thanks, Chris.